Welcome back to another episode of Unbreakable Confidence. I've got the legend, Mr. Alan Stein Jr. on here. If you don't know anything about him, first of all, you should go get his book, Sustain Your Game. If you're looking at it, I just purchased it. And if you don't think that I read it, you can look at all the highlights in here that I actually did go through it and took some notes. But a little bit of background on him. He's a extremely sought after speaker, more so in organizations now. He's worked with some of the best athletes in the really across the globe. That would include like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, just to name a few. But I would really just view you as like a high performance expert. And so I'm super pumped to be able to have you on to share your knowledge and wisdom with all our listeners, parents, athletes. And hopefully, as my goal is for everybody just to be able to take one thing away. I think if you can get one thing, one tool, one thing that helps drive your belief, then ultimately that's the goal. So I appreciate you joining me, sir.
Oh my goodness, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I'm hoping to match your energy, and we'll have a great conversation.
Yeah. So how about you, if you want to take maybe 2 minutes or so and just kind of give a little bit of a backstory on yourself, like where you've come from, how you got involved, and then where you are and what you're doing now, just within like the performance industry.
So basketball was my first identifiable passion, and I fell in love with the game at 5 years old. And I'm incredibly grateful that here 40 plus years later, basketball is still a major pillar of my life. And I'm thankful that I've been able to not only make a living, but build an extraordinary life around the sport that I was most passionate about. And what I think hopefully will help your listeners as far as my journey is concerned is, I spent the first third of my life as a very dedicated basketball player, was able to play at Elon University down in North Carolina. So was able to play through college, at which time I started to fall in love with the performance side of strength and conditioning and fitness and nutrition and mindset. So when I graduated from Elon in the late 90s, I thought, what could be better than combining my first love of basketball with this newfound love of strength and conditioning and performance training. And I immediately became a basketball performance coach. And I did that for the next 15 years and had a chance to work with some really elite level players and coaches and teams at the middle school and high school level, all the way up through the NBA. And then 5 years ago, I decided to leave the training space directly and focus my efforts as a keynote speaker and author to teach businesses and organizations and executives and entrepreneurs how to apply all of the life lessons that I had learned through the game of basketball and show them how to apply those to their business and their life. But what really completes kind of the journey from a sports standpoint is I spent the first third as a player. I spent the next third as a performance coach. And now I'm the proud father of 12-year-old twin sons and a 10-year-old daughter. So now in this third, I'm a sports parent, and my children all play competitive sports. They all happen to be really into basketball, but they've played just about every sport under the sun. So I have seen athletics through every vantage point as a player, as a coach, and as a parent. And I really try and take that holistic view and approach when I'm sharing with others, and excited to have that opportunity to share with you and your listeners today.
Yeah. So I think that's like let's start there. That's one of the most critical pieces, because you have so many different vantage points as player, working with extremely high level caliber players, now really just high level businesses, CEOs. It's all very similar. Is in your experience, from your viewpoints, what is it that make those stand out, right? What is it that, from an athletic standpoint, like a KD, a Kobe, that helps them stand out? From a business perspective, the companies that really make it, like the great ones versus, the good ones that just plug by. What are some of those key elements?
Well, the three that jump out immediately, and I love teaching in threes. The first is the lesson that I learned directly from Kobe Bryant back in 2007, when he told me that the best in the world never get bored with the basics. And that if you want to be a high performer in any area of your life, that you need to make a commitment to working towards mastery of the fundamentals during the unseen hours. Now, obviously, in the game of basketball specifically, the fundamentals include your footwork, your shooting mechanics, but whatever it is that you're trying to excel at, if it's a different sport, or if you're trying to excel in the classroom, or if you're trying to excel in any other area of life, you need to get crystal clear on what the fundamentals are, the basic building blocks to which the rest of that house is built. And you need to commit towards working towards mastery of them during the unseen hours. And this is true in basketball, this is true in business, and it's true in everything in between. So number one is you have to learn how to respect and appreciate the fundamentals. Number two, the highest performers that I've ever been around in basketball or business have learned to blend confidence with humility. I understand that is building unbreakable and unshakable confidence is the theme of this podcast. And that is crucial to not only performing at a high level, but also having a high sense of self. But confidence is something that is earned, and you earn confidence in a few different ways. You earn confidence through demonstrated performance, through competency. When you do things and you can see yourself doing things, it gives you the confidence that you can continue to level up. Confidence also comes from the way we talk to ourselves, that internal dialogue. Yeah. I think I could make a pretty compelling argument that the things we say silently to ourselves are some of the most important things we'll ever say. And we have to learn how to talk to ourselves in an encouraging and an empowering and a compassionate way. And when you can do those things fairly consistently, and you put a lot of effort into your preparation, and I keep using this term, the unseen hours, because I believe most of our confidence is developed and built and earned in the unseen hours, which is when no one else is watching. That's how you'll develop the confidence. However, it's so important that you continue to brush that confidence with a big stroke of humility. Humility to the point that you stay open to coaching, you stay open to feedback, that no matter how good you get in any area of your life, you acknowledge that you can still get better. This is not about playing the comparison game and saying, hey, I'm better than that person, so I'm good enough. It's saying, am I as good as I'm capable of becoming? And ultimately, none of us will ever actually reach our potential. That there might be a razor thin gap between what we're capable of doing and what we're actually doing. But I don't believe any of us actually reach our potential. That's the fun of life. It is the constant pursuit of narrowing that gap of what we're capable of and what we're currently doing. So no matter how good you get in any area of life, you want to know and acknowledge that you can still get better. And whether you're talking about Kobe Bryant or Kevin Durant or Stephen Curry or any of the titans in business, they blend that earned confidence with a massive dose of humility. And the third thing that unites all high performers is they have a North Star. They have a goal, or they have a dream, and they use that to provide clarity and direction. But once they've crystallized that North Star, they take their focus off of that and they put it into the process. They're process driven. They understand the importance of habits, of systems. They know that what they do on a daily basis will directly dictate whether or not they even come close to reaching that goal or dream. So high performers, they do dream big, but they don't sit around dreaming and hoping and wishing and wanting. They put all of their efforts into the process and the daily behaviors, the micro skills, and the habits that they need to increase the chance that will actually occur. And when you can embrace the fundamentals, earn your confidence and blend it with humility, and stay focused on the process, there's no reason that you can't become a high performer in any area of your life.
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially when you talk about because I think that's in every sport beyond basketball. I think the fundamentals, the foundations is if you ever want to get better at some point, you got to go back and fix those if you feel like you're plateauing. And it's interesting. I can't remember where I heard this like a month ago or so. And the quote was, the simple things in life are the ones that work, and that's why nobody does them. And it's like the basics are the things that work. It's people want the glorified, the beauty, something like, oh, no. That answer seems too simple to help me get to wherever I want to be, whether it's in sports, whether it's in life, even in relationships or whatever we're talking about is like, it's the same thing, right? If you're dating somebody, it's like, do the things that got you them, right? Like ultimately those are the simple foundational things. So very interesting with that. My follow-up question would be on your second piece when you talked about the blending confidence and humility is how would you, in the most simplistic way, kind of define confidence? Because I think that, a lot of young athletes come to me And they're like, I'm like, well, how do we, if you're here and we want to get to here, like, what do you feel like? And to me, it's identity. I think you have to make a total shift in your identity. I think ultimately that's where we get. But the one word, it's kind of almost a buzzword a little bit too, is confidence. And so I asked them, I'm like, so what does confidence mean to you? And they're like, well, I don't really know. I'm like, so why do we want something that we can't define? So I'm just curious, like for you, like what would be your definition? And maybe some athletes or parents can, take your definition and really run with it in terms of like knowing more, because your third thing was clarity, right? Like knowing what that is. How would you define confidence?
I would define it as a blend between self-awareness and self-belief. Knowing exactly who you are to your core, knowing what things that you do well, but also knowing your opportunities for growth, and using that to fuel your self-belief and your self-worth. The way that you view yourself is confidence. And, back to what I was saying before, see, confidence without humility is what will lead to arrogance or cockiness, or in extreme cases, a sense of narcissism. So it's the humility that keeps the framework up and keeps us on track. But yeah, I believe self-awareness is the foundation to everything that we're looking to achieve and to grow into. And then if you blend that with your self-belief, believing that you are, it doesn't mean that you're doing it at the moment. You believe you are capable of earning the right to do it in the future. That's how I would view confidence.
Yeah. And I think in my experience too, in mentoring, so some of them it's really knowing like that they are valuable and worthy enough to obtain those things. I feel like that wedges a big gap in between. It's like, well, I want X, Y, and Z, but I just don't really think I deserve it. I'm like, no. Like, this is step one. You got to know that you're like valuable and worthy enough to have those things before you can ever have any kind of inspiration and be fueled to like wake up and go after those things. So I think that's that self-belief, that awareness, or I think I would probably call it like identity. I think we're just same concept, just different words. Yeah, powerful. So what have you, since you've been with both high school athletes as well as the elite of the elite, what have you witnessed as some of the most common like hurdles or struggles for them?
Well, ultimately it stems from lack of confidence.
Yeah.
That's the biggest hurdle. And, on some way, shape, or form, not believing that they are good enough to belong, or not believing that they're capable of doing what it is that they set out to do. And as I said earlier, that kind of stems from our self-talk. That stems on the silent conversations that we have with ourselves. And, I would imagine most high performers at some point in their life, and I'll even throw, myself into that, have certainly struggled with doubt, have struggled with confidence, have struggled with, am I actually good enough to do this or to get this done? Have struggled with some form of an imposter syndrome. Why should I make the team? Or why should, and those things are very natural. And when you start to have those feelings, the way that you talk to yourself when you're faced with some self-doubt or you're faced with some imposter syndrome makes all the difference in the world. If you tack on top of that extra criticism and shame and guilt, then you're going to start spiraling in the wrong direction, or at least the direction that you're not trying to go. If you can learn how to talk to yourself with some empathy and some compassion, and just say, hey, it's normal to feel this way. Every single elite athlete on the planet at some point has had self-doubt. Now, maybe it was when they were 8 years old, but they've had self-doubt at some point. So it's a normal human emotion. It's a normal human condition and feeling. And you need to be able to acknowledge and say, this is normal. It's okay that I'm feeling this way, but I know that I can overcome this. I know that I can earn the right to rid myself of this doubt, prove that I'm competent enough to perform at this level. And when we can learn to talk to ourselves kind of in that empowering and compassionate way, that's how we overcome that. And what I try to use as a framework is, and I've had to use this in my own life numerous times, is I try to talk to myself the same way that I would talk to somebody I care about. When I was coaching, the same way I would talk to one of my players, same way I would talk to my own children right now as a father, that if any of my children were struggling with doubt, self-doubt on whether or not they were good enough, I would encourage them. I would support them. I would build them up. Now, I would still be honest with them. This isn't about being deceitful or sugarcoating or telling somebody they're good enough if they're not. Honesty is an incredibly important component to that. But I would do everything I can to lift them up and to support them and encourage them. And I've had to learn to talk to myself in the same way and say, Alan, it's, you're having a little doubt about this, and that's okay. You're going to overcome this doubt. That's just another hurdle to get over, because you're going to earn the right to overcome this doubt by putting in the work and putting in the preparation.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about that. Like literally 3 days ago was having a conversation with a group of athletes, and I was like, your biggest misconception is you think when you get confidence, you never feel doubt or fear again. It's like telling somebody like, hey, you're happy all the time. You must never have a bad day, or you must never have moments of anger or frustration. It's like, no, you just choose not to live in them, right? It's like you're saying, like, you earn the right to be able to say like, hey, like, I'm not going to let this ruin my day. I'm not going to let this ruin my week. I'm not going to let this ruin my career based off of some negative emotion that's coming in. And that really leads into my next. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, what I was going to say, I'm so glad you went in that direction. And that reminded me of something else that in my own life has helped with confidence. It's important for everyone to acknowledge that we cannot predict the future. Now, we try to predict the future because it gives us a sense of security and certainty, which I think just kind of helps put our minds at ease. But the future is not something we can predict. I found it fascinating, especially over this 2-year plus pandemic, that word uncertainty has been thrown around a lot. And people would say, well, things are just so uncertain. And I know what they meant, but I would always smile and wink and say, hey, the future's always been uncertain. This is not something that was created by the pandemic. Now, before the pandemic, most people in society had kind of lulled themselves into thinking they could predict the future. But, you and I right now at the time of this recording cannot predict with 100% accuracy even what's going to happen later this afternoon in every area of life. Now, because certain things have occurred in the past that we can probably predict with decent accuracy, kind of an overview, but none of us knows what the future holds, which means by definition, the future is 100% hypothetical. We're just guessing.
Yeah.
Well, if the future is going to be hypothetical, what I'm really trying to work on in my own life is predicting the future is going to work out in my favor. Is assuming if it's going to be hypothetical, things are going to work out in my favor, because that's just as real as assuming things aren't going to work out in my favor. And you can use that in any sports analogy. If you have a big game coming up on Friday, you can assume that the other team is better and you guys are going to lose the game, and that or you can assume that everything's going to go well, that all of the practice and preparation that you've put in, you're going to be able to execute and play well. So to me, since the future is 100% hypothetical, there's nothing wrong with strengthening our confidence in the belief that it's going to work out in our favor. Now, with that being said, we always have to be emotionally agile and strong enough to know that that's not always going to happen, that we are going to face adversity. We are going to face challenge, that things are never going to always work out in our favor. We'll be prepared when they do, but I don't see any sense in having a pessimistic view of the future, or assuming I'm not good enough to make the team, or I'm going to miss this free throw that I have to take. Don't make that assumption. If you're going to make assumptions, why don't you assume that you will make the team and you will make the free throw?
Yeah. Why do you feel like, especially with, the college teams that I work with, going in, like the first question I ask is like, what's the number one emotion you feel on a regular basis? And in some form or fashion, it's stress, worry, anxiety, something along those lines. Why do you think that so many kids are essentially addicted to negative emotions?
Well, we have our negative emotions for a reason. I mean, at the most basic and primal level, they're to keep us safe.
Right.
Like, we need to have fears. We need to have, we need to be scared. These things they serve a purpose. Now, it doesn't mean that they're preferred emotions or pleasant emotions,
right,
but we have them for a reason. And, I also think that, and this has only been, heightened exponentially since the advent of social media. It's kind of what draws the eye. It's kind of, we live in kind of a clickbait society, and, most of the mainstream media tends to skew towards the negative, the shock and the awe, because that's what draws us in. I think we have a negativity bias as human beings that's wired in our DNA. So it's something we just need to be cognizant of. But we do have more control over that than we often think.
Right.
You just mentioned that one of the most common feelings that we share as human beings is the feeling of stress. And no one is immune to that feeling. But I started to uncover while I was writing Sustain Your Game that on some level, and I know this will sound like a controversial statement, on some level, stress is a choice. And the reason it's a choice is because I believe with every ounce of my being, and this is taken a major rewiring, because for the first 43 years of my life, I wasn't in this camp, but now I am, and it has been a game changer, that stress is not caused by outside events or by circumstances or by what people say or what people do. That stuff does not cause our stress. Our stress is caused by our resistance to those things. Our stress is caused by the way we internalize those things, our perspective of those things. So something happened, anything that can happen in our lives is not what causes the stress. Our stress comes from the response. And the reason that I'm hoping your listeners find that as empowering as I do is we get to control our response. So this now puts us back in the driver's seat and gives us the keys to the car, because we should all acknowledge that we don't control what's going on in the world around us.
Right.
We don't control the events and the circumstances. We don't control what other people say or what other people do. We have no control over any of that, but we get to control how we respond to those things. And the responses that we choose ultimately dictate the stress level that we feel. And for me, once that finally clicked, like I said, it only took me 43 years for it to click. It was an absolute game changer. And now with everything that I've shared so far and everything that I'll continue to share during this conversation, I want to make sure your listeners know I'm not coming from a place of mastery. Like, this is stuff that I still find challenging. I still struggle with. I'm not going to sit here and pretend for 1 second that I don't ever feel stressed. Of course I do. But I now acknowledge and can humbly admit that I'm the source of that stress, nobody else. So I'm not blaming what's going on in the world. The world's just going to do what the world's going to do.
Right.
It's up to me to respond thoughtfully and with intention. And some days I do a much better job of that than others. Same thing with this whole concept of predicting the future. Yeah, there are certain times where I don't predict the best future for myself, and I have to catch myself and course correct. So all of that to say, everybody needs to continue to be patient with themselves, to try not to be self-judgmental and self-critical of yourselves, and to pile on the empathy and compassion when you're talking to yourself, because all of this stuff is really hard to do. And these things are basic principles, kind of what we started our conversation with, but none of this stuff is easy to do. And it's been my experience that people mistakenly use the words basic and easy as if they're synonyms, and they're not. They don't mean the same thing. What it takes to be really, really good in your specific sport is incredibly basic. What it takes to be an elite player in your sport is definitely far from easy.
Yeah. And I think that's one of like the initial messages, for me too, trying to get across to people is like literally the first thing I'm like, from a 30,000 foot view, if I can help you understand one thing, it's like that ultimately, like, you are the creator of your life. As you just said, like, you are in control. You get to determine the responses, the outcomes, and everything else. I know it doesn't seem like that. It's this same conversation with the group a few days ago is you were still making your decisions. Now, it might have been based off of your parents. It may have been based off of society, your friends, coaches, teachers, whoever. But ultimately, like, you made that decision, and you have to acknowledge and start to learn that, start deciding 100% for yourself. Start making the decisions of what truly makes you happy, not 70%, not like, do you love your sport? Yeah, how much? 70%. Well, that's not really like, do you love it or do you not, right? Like, are you all in? Are you fueled? Or when that alarm goes off, are you already thinking about going back to bed later that evening? And I think there's a big shift in that. Changing, I guess, flipping a little bit. One of the chapters that stood out to me probably the most was the expand your circle. and spend a little bit of time talking about what not only mentorship, obviously everybody knows that's listening, how much that word means to me and how much I preach it and the power behind having a powerful mentor. But also combine that with like masterminding too, because I think mentorship might be like one person that really helps guides you along the way, but to be able to mastermind, to just get in proximity, right? I think Tony Robbins calls it proximity is power, right? Like once you can get around those people, the rub factor, right? All that stuff starts to rub off. So how has this impacted your life? How do you utilize this when you're talking with athletes, corporations, things like that? If you don't mind touching on a little bit of mentorship and masterminding.
When I say the word performance, a synonym to performance is output. It's what we're putting out into the world, whether it's the performance specifically in a sport or in any other area of our life. And I've come to realize that my outputs are directly related to my inputs. And my inputs are the people that I invest my time with, what I read, watch, and listen to, what I'm consuming on a daily basis. All of those things directly dictate my outcomes. Right. So if I want to raise my outcomes and raise my performance, then I need to raise the level of the people that I'm investing my time with, what I'm reading, watching, and listening to, what I'm consuming on a regular basis, and constantly need to shake those things up. And part of that equation is who are we spending time with? And yeah, very true to what you just said there. I mean, I recommend that we invest our time, a portion of our time, with people that have already walked the path that we're trying to walk down. There's a gentleman named Frank Shamrock, who was kind of one of the godfathers of UFC. I mean, he was him and his brother Ken kind of really started the UFC as we know it now back in the 90s. And he had said something to me one time that was really, really profound. He said we should always, at any given time in our life, we should have three different people in our life. We should have one person that's kind of ahead of us on the path, which I think you would label as a mentor, somebody that's already walked the path and blazed the trail that we're trying to go. And we need to have that person in our life and be open to receiving what they pour into us. The second person we need to have in our life is a peer, somebody that's going on the same journey we're going on. This could be a colleague or a coworker if you're an adult. This could be a teammate if you're still in school and playing sports, but somebody that has similar aspirations and dreams and has high empathy for the challenges and the struggle that you're facing. And then the third person is somebody that's coming up behind us, somebody that will look to us as a mentor, someone that we've already blazed the trail that they're trying to follow, and we can lend a hand out to them or send the elevator back down for them. And these three different vantage points, having somebody in front of you, somebody beside you, and somebody behind you. And I don't say behind you in a diminishing way. Right. It's just purely a vantage point. Right. If you can make sure that you have those three people in your life distinctly at any given time, it will help you take a holistic approach to growth and improvement. And it'll help you see so many different blind spots that maybe you weren't able to see on your own, or if you only have one of those type of people in your life. And, since adopting that mindset and kind of perspective, I can tell you too, that some of the biggest lessons I've learned have actually come from my work with the people that are behind me, that are trying to do what I'm doing, because I have to teach and I have to coach and I have to up level and I have to know my stuff so well in order to help them that it really refines my perspective and my philosophy. So if you are looking to improve your performance and your outputs, I highly recommend that you try to find those three people in your life. And keep in mind too, that this doesn't mean you're signing them up for a lifetime contract.
Yeah.
People in your life will always come and go. I don't know the full saying. It's something like, people are in your life for a reason or a season. There might even be a third component to that, but people are going to always kind of come and go and matriculate in and out of your life. So maybe someone's only a mentor in your life for 3 or 4 months. That relationship kind of comes full circle, and then you need to seek somebody else out. And there's nothing wrong with that. So just be conscious of the fact that those three different vantage points will help you broaden your perspective, help you stretch, help you grow, and certainly help you produce higher outputs.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I had to learn over the last probably, just a couple years that one of my mentors verbatim, she's like, we've been hardwired to believe that every relationship is meant to last forever.
Right.
And like, just because you let somebody go doesn't mean like you don't like them or you wish them any ill will. It was like, maybe you've outgrown them or like you're going down a different path. But I think that for, gosh, probably 30 plus years is I was kind of under that assumption of like, hey, like, well, I always have to give my time and energy to that person because like they've always been around, and I'm a bad friend if I don't do X, Y, and Z. So that's been a powerful piece for me to start to understand that not every relationship is meant to last forever, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So.
Absolutely. Well said. In fact, very few relationships are meant to last forever.
Right.
Shoot, I look in my own life. Now I've got 3 children and I will be their father for as long as, any of us are on this planet. But outside of that, outside of immediate family and spouses and things like that, yeah, it's going to ebb and flow. I had folks that in high school were my best friends in the entire world, and we're not near as close now 30 years later.
Right.
That's all part of the process. And as you said so perfectly, especially when people are slowly growing in different directions or have different aspirations or set different standards or need different things, it's okay to be able to let those things go.
Absolutely. 2 more questions.
Sure.
One is, what's next for you personally, professionally? Like what are some of your intentions, your goals, your desires over the, next month, 6 months, years, 5 years, 10 years? Where's your vision headed, both personally, professionally?
Well, on a personal level, and we mentioned this right before we hit record, part of my life philosophy is I always like having something on my calendar to look forward to. And for me, since physical fitness is a really important component of my own life, having something to train for is important. I'm 46 years old, so I'm not technically a competitive athlete anymore. I don't play on a team. I don't have a jersey that I wear. So in order for me to keep things fresh and to keep things exciting, I like having things to train for. Now, some of the things that I've trained for over the last couple of years, I did a half marathon. I did an ultra marathon. I hiked rim to rim of the Grand Canyon. I did a Spartan race. I just recently completed a Navy SEAL training simulation. Coming up over the next couple of months, I have a team relay, an endurance race that I'm doing out in the Portland, Oregon area. And then I'm doing this last man standing ultra marathon event in Labor Day. And then I've signed up to do a 10K, and then the next day do a half marathon down in Orlando at Disney World in Orlando. So I've got a few things kind of on that front.
Yeah.
And that I'm excited to be training for. And the cool part is, and I know this, each of them requires a slightly different type of fitness. Like what I needed to do to get in shape for the Navy SEAL experience is a little different than what I need to do to get in shape for one of these ultra marathons. And I like being able to switch it up. It keeps my training fresh and keeps me kind of committed and accountable to doing something. On the professional side, now that the world has for the most part opened back up after the pandemic, I'm back out on stages and in boardrooms and speaking to organizations and businesses at a pretty consistent clip now, which I'm very thankful for, because outside of spending time with my children, there's no place I'd rather be than be on a stage pouring into folks. So I'm excited to be doing that and should shape up to have a pretty busy fall. And then I'm slowly starting to piece together the framework for my 3rd book. So
nice.
Raise Your Game in 2019, Sustain Your Game. The follow-up just came out a few months ago, and I'll complete the trilogy probably within the next year and a half, 2 years. But that's something that's kind of off in the distance that I'm slowly working towards now, because that's how it will eventually get done.
Yeah. Last question. If you could leave parents and or athletes with one piece of advice, what would it be?
Get crystal clear on the person that you're trying to become, and you can decide the timeline for that. If you are a sophomore in high school, maybe you decide to say, who is the person I want to become when I graduate from high school? You pick the timeline. For me, I'm 46 years old. I've got great clarity on the man I want to be 20 years from now, the 66-year-old Alan. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I fully acknowledge that time is not promised and tomorrow is not guaranteed. No matter how good of care I take of myself, there's nothing that guarantees I'll be on this planet for another 20 years. But because I do take my physical, mental, and emotional well-being and health and wellness very seriously, I don't see any reason that I won't be. So I've got clarity on who I want to be 20 years from now. I want the 66-year-old Alan to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. I want the 66-year-old Alan to have a deep, strong connection with his children, his family, and his friends. I want the 66-year-old Alan at that time to be doing work he considers meaningful and in service of other people. Well, every single decision I make in my life in present day, I make with that in mind, because I run it through that filter and I ask myself, is making this decision going to take me closer to becoming that guy, or is it going to take me further away? And it doesn't matter if I'm talking about something like, what am I going to eat for lunch, or what am I going to watch on Netflix? I ask myself, is it going to take me closer to being that guy? And if the answer is yes, then I do it without hesitation. If the answer is no, then I at least pause and reflect and decide whether or not it's still something I want to do. Because I'm not looking for perfection, and which is good news, because I'm flawed and I'm fallible. And when it comes to decision making, I'm definitely not batting 1,000. So I'm not going to sit here and say every single decision I make in my life is in alignment with that, but the vast majority are. And the beautiful part is, if I continue to make those decisions, then that is the person I will become. I'm in essence designing my future right now in the present. But the beautiful part is, I'm not postponing that. I'm not saying that I won't be that person until I'm 66. I'm going to be that person today, because these are the decisions that I'm making. And to me, that's what's most important. So if someone listening to this, again, is a sophomore in high school, and you say, my goal is to be a college soccer player, then ask yourself, what are the types of decisions that a college soccer player makes on a regular basis, and make those decisions now. Earn the ability to be a college soccer player by the decisions you make now. And if you can act as if, then you'll slowly start to create your own future. And I found that construct incredibly helpful. And ultimately, I check in with myself every single night. Every single night before I go to bed, I, in essence, ask myself this very important question. I say, Alan, you just traded 24 hours of your life for the progress that you made today. Are you happy with that trade? If the answer is yes, I get a nice, peaceful, restful night's sleep. If the answer is no, and occasionally it's no, I occasionally don't have my best day. I occasionally don't make my best decisions. I learn how to forgive myself with some compassion and grace, and I just plan to move to the next play. I remind myself that today is always over tomorrow. Today wasn't my best day, but I get another crack at this thing called life tomorrow morning, and I'll take advantage of it then. And I still get a restful, peaceful night's sleep.
The perfect mic drop. I don't know how we end it any better than that. If you want to tell everybody where they can find you on social media, I know you're pretty involved in Facebook and Instagram. I think Instagram. I know LinkedIn. If you want to kind of just quickly go over that, and then we'll kind of wrap things up.
That sounds great. So my main speaking website, in case anyone listening thinks I can add value to your school or team or organization, is alansteinjr.com. I have a peripheral website, strongerteam.com, has information on both of my books, my podcast, YouTube channel. I do some exclusive one-on-one coaching, and I have an online course. And then, as you said, you can find me very easily at Alan Stein Jr. on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I take a tremendous amount of pride in not only being accessible, but being very responsive. So if anything during this conversation struck a chord, if someone wants to ask a question or share a story or needs anything from me, just shoot me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'll make sure to get back to you. And then, yes, if you have any interest in reading either book, you can get Raise Your Game or Sustain Your Game at Amazon or Audible or wherever you like to buy books.
Yeah, and I can vouch totally. I'm super appreciative of you taking the time to do this, because that same thing is, I just reached out to you and kind of like and follow your journey, on LinkedIn and Facebook, and just kind of got the urge. I was like, you know what? I think that would be a great conversation. Let's just see if he responds. And without hesitation, within 24 hours, you responded back and agreed to do this. So I'm super, super, super appreciative of that. And as always, I hope you guys took one thing from it. And if you do have questions, please drop them in the comments. Please shoot him direct messages, direct message me. It doesn't matter. I can pass those along. I would highly encourage you guys to go get the book. I literally read it in about 2 or 3 days, sat down and thoroughly enjoyed it. My wife can vouch for me. She's like, oh, wow, that's one you're really into. I was like, absolutely. She's like, you're highlighting like crazy. So again, hopefully you were able to take one thing away, one tool, maybe something it hardwired a belief, something you've kind of been on the edge about and implanted that belief, whether it be about the basics or confidence or mentorship or masterminding or the environment that you surround yourself with, or a tool that you can utilize today to ultimately help you maybe manage stress better, manage your anxiety. Because to me, life is meant to be joyful. Life is supposed to be fun. Life is supposed to be a celebration. So let's move in that direction, more of the positive emotions. So I appreciate you again. Thank you guys. Love you. Talk with you soon.